So this is a roundup of the most helpful tools that I have found in my many decades of knitting. So I have a few tech tools and a few actual knitting tools that really changed the way I knit. They made me a better knitter, a more confident, a more competent knitter. Um, Maybe they'll do the same for you. I don't know. Let's find out. So my grandma taught me to knit when I was like 8, I think. Um, and even then, when I picked it up a bit more properly when I was about 17 or so, I don't think Ravelry even existed then. It was truly the dark ages. And us knitters learned by word of mouth and trial and error. And also, I didn't know any other children who knit, and the only elderly people I hung out with were my grandparents. And so that was the extent of my support network as a knitter. Needless to say, my knitting improved exponentially when the internet came around. Back in the day, my approach to actually working on a project would have been printing out the pattern so that I could sort of like follow along, cross out, highlight, use something to like keep track of where I'm at in the pattern. That has its downfalls, if you have to like frog an entire section and start over, as I often do. The fuck have I done? It's, not that easy to undo all the highlighting that you have done. The app that I think has changed my life the most is GoodNote. GoodNotes? Singular? GoodNotes, plural. Um, So this is an app that it kind of does a bunch of different things, and I'm sure I don't even know all of them. I'm sure I'm not using it to its fullest capacity. But the way I use it is, as soon as I buy a pattern, I will download it and just immediately put it in my knitting patterns folder, and then I will use the PDF in GoodNotes to actually keep track of my progress. And so what I'll usually do is once I've figured out my size, I will go through and highlight my size, which stitch counts belong to my project. And that way I don't get sort of confused and start making a different size half the way through. Not that I've done that before. Oh my God. So then I will also use it to sort of cross out sections as I finish them. I will do like, little tally check marks to keep track of my rows and stitches and repeats and whatever. So it's kind of like a living document. When I inevitably screw it up, I will just go back and erase all of the highlighting and check marks that I've made and just start that section over. And it's really easy to know where I'm at and keep an eye on, that I'm not skipping a page or anything like that. And I can also just make notes to myself as I go. Like if I change something on the front, I'll make a note, do a few extra decreases on the back to make sure it is the same as what I've done for both sides. Next is, I'm really not sure like how well known this is, but I always thought it was a massive pain in the ass that Ravelry didn't have an app. Like I am often working off my phone, like probably a lot of people, and their mobile website not super user friendly. Um, and so I found it a just massive ball ache really to try and use Ravelry on my phone. And I only recently learned about Rabbit, which is a third party app that does basically everything you need Ravelry to do on your phone. So I can keep my projects updated. I can upload photos. I can just make notes in my project pages. I can see patterns in my library, things that I've liked. it's, a pretty stripped back, bare bones version of Ravelry, but it really is like everything that I need it to do. If I need the full website for whatever reason, I will use my iPad or my computer, but actually being able to see what I need on my phone has been such a relief. So I know there's a couple of other alternatives, but Ravit is the first one I tried, and I found it really intuitive, clean, easy to use. So I just stuck with it. I didn't feel the need to investigate any of the others. Um, so yeah, recommend. The last, tech tool that I use a lot, again, I don't know how well known it is, but I do think it is worth repeating, is Yarn Sub. So, I used to I used to look at the recommended yarn and say, great, DK, got it, and I would buy any DK weight, anything that they had at Spotlight, which is like the Michaels of Australia, except less well stocked and more expensive, um, as is our want. And like obviously, it never worked because the yarn wasn't remotely similar.
So YarnSub is a tool that will suggest alternative yarns that are similar to the one recommended by the pattern if, for whatever reason, you are not going to use the recommended yarn. So you can search for the recommended yarn in YarnSub and it'll bring up a list of similar yarns sorted from most similar to least similar. You can filter by price if that's the reason you don't want to use the suggested yarn. If you're allergic to something, you can filter by the fiber type, and it'll have a percentage of how similar that yarn is. Then it'll tell you the ways in which it is similar and the ways in which it is different, as well as anything that you should, be aware of with this particular yarn substitution. Obviously, you will still need to swatch for the project, but this way you're going to get, a similar kind of drape, a similar look and feel to if you used the suggested yarn.
So, actual knitting tools that have changed my life. And, it really depends how far along your knitting journey you are as to how revelatory some of these will be. The number one thing that I bought that sort of opened up a whole new world to me was a set of interchangeable circular needles. So yeah, if you've been knitting for a while, probably know how amazing they are, but I haven't used straight needles for a long, long time, but I would buy fixed circulars as I found a pattern calling for a different size. But, the cable length is a factor. And so, I would end up with like multiple fixed circular needles of the same needle size with different cable lengths. And it's like, it was just extremely redundant. So buying interchangeable circulars sort of made anything possible. I always had the tool I needed. I didn't have to like go and spend more money. Obviously, the outlay cost is substantial for a decent set of interchangeable needles. Um, but if knitting is something that you want to continue, like it's so worth it. I think I've had 4 sets of various types of interchangeable needles. One was absolute garbage, and I regret having spent the money on them. Um, so maybe that's another video for another day. So I have made a modification to my interchangeable needle case. As per usual, this hack came from Reddit. As per usual, I couldn't find the thread it came from again if I tried. So, what this genius person on Reddit did was found these little zippered pouches. So, these are just like a little clear plastic pouch with a zip. I have attached, oh no. So, I've used 4 stitch markers to keep these attached to my needle case. And so I have The keys and the little rubber grippy things that I need to um, change needle tips. I have my spare cables, most of which are currently in projects. My little gauge ruler, cutty little thingy. My little sock shorties are in here. Some more rulers, my sock DPNs. And so, like, everything I need to use these needles, I keep in here. It's so convenient. Like if you know somebody who is really disorganized and prone to misplacing things, um, I've got them beat. It's not a competition, but I definitely do win. I just I buy multiple versions of the same item just because I lose them so often. Which when we're talking like Burt's Bees lip balms, that's okay. When we're talking like expensive, what is supposed to be a buy it once knitting accessory tool, I don't have the money for that. I so this way, everything is where I expect it to be because I'm keeping up my end of the bargain and putting it back there when I'm done. That is crucial, but it just means I'm not sort of like rummaging all over the house in my yarn project bins, looking for things when I need them. I know where they're going to be. And the other piece of that puzzle is a little bitty notions pouch. So I have like a bunch of um they're kind of like, I don't know, 4 by 6 inch pouches that I kind of use as a little like on the go project bag. But I keep a little baby pouch with everything that I need like every time I'm knitting. So I will kind of just like keep this beside me. This comes with me when I go, when I'm like taking a whip on the road. I will always take this with me. And a little pouch means that it's super portable and that I'm not going to have like a goldfish situation where I just keep, if it's bigger than this, I'll just fill it with crap because I can. Like, I'm very limited here by design. And so I have um, embroidery scissors, I have a knitting thimble, um, I have a cable needle, I have a little crochet stitch picker upper tool, um, my embroidery darning needles. I have a couple of stitch markers just because I needed somewhere to put them, and a couple of, this shouldn't be in here. Illegally, I have a couple of needle tips from my other interchangeable kit, so don't tell anyone. I'm gonna get in trouble. Anyway, uh, again, I have had to come to the table in terms of putting things in the pouch, and that did take an amount of dedication on my part. But now I know where everything is. I keep that little pouch beside me all the time. It comes on the road. I'm never without one of the things that I know I will inevitably need every time I knit. So that I really recommend, just like a little tiny pouch you can just take everywhere with you. Another item that seems really obvious, but I know a lot of people are operating without them because I've seen Reddit posts where people are ripping their hair out trying to untangle just horrible bundles of yarn. I've been there. I just the amount of time that I spent sitting on the couch, like vibrating with just fury about having tangled a like lovely hank of yarn into just an abject horror show. Yeah, it's not worth it. And like my Winder and Swift were the cheapest ones I could find because I was broke when I bought them. Um, yeah, up until like 4 years ago, I was still winding my balls of yarn by hand, and I do think of the two items, the ball winder is definitely the nice to have. The Swift is a need to have. Obviously, you can like hang your hank of yarn over the back of a dining chair. I see a lot of people talking about that. But like, what a pain in the dick to be like unwinding it. Um, and it also like is not adjustable. So like whatever size the chair is, that's the size you're working with. Whereas the Swift will kind of expand and contract depending on the size of your hank. And you know, you can like very easily still wind a ball of yarn by hand if you are on a budget or if you are like, you know, trying not to amass a bunch of crap. Use the Swift just to make sure your yarn isn't going to revolt against you. And yeah, wind it by hand. But I will say it, you know, it takes me 5 minutes max to get them out, set them up, wind the ball, pack them down, and like I don't have time. I don't have time to be doing things the long way. I'm impatient. I'm a millennial. We have expectations. So yeah, for me, it was absolutely worthwhile to buy both. Um, if you're on the fence, though, a Swift is going to change your life. I'm not exaggerating. You're going to be a different person. You won't know yourself. So I kind of hate stitch holders. In a previous lifetime, when I had to put stitches on hold, I would just thread them onto a piece of yarn. But it's a real pain in the ass to get them off the yarn back onto the needle. And I also find stitch holders to be extremely tedious to get the stitches onto and then move them back onto the needles. Stitch Saver, though, it's so easy. I was like apprehensive because it seemed like it was disposable, and that seemed really wasteful to me. But sometimes I'm cutting it off this spool and then keeping it once I don't need it anymore, and so like I can reuse those pieces. Otherwise, I sort of will just leave it on the spool because this is hollow. Getting it, getting the stitches on and off of this stitch keeper, it's so easy. It's so fast. You will sort of like insert the needle into the end. It's a hollow tube. Stick it on the end of the needle. The stitches will just slide off the needle. When you're putting them back on the needle, same thing. Stick it over the edge of the needle tip, slide them back on. It's so easy. It's so fast.
And hot tip, if you buy it in this unbranded spool rather than one of the cutesy knitting brands, it is about a quarter of the price.
The last item is something that I have only purchased pretty recently because it's the 700th version of this such tool that I have tried. Row counters never seem to work for me. I have ADHD, and like when I get in the zone, I will just blast past any kind of stitch marker, row counter, and then like before I come back into my body, it's an hour later, and I've just knitted like 6 inches of sleeve that I was not meant to, that is the wrong diameter that I'm gonna have to frog. I have tried the little, it's like a little blue with windy spools on the end that you will kind of like turn as you get to the stitch marker. That was way too easy for me to just slip it without even thinking about it. I have used the little digital finger row counters. I just forget I'm wearing it. So this little stitch marker, because you physically have to move it, and it's kind of like, it's not cumbersome, but it is very obviously different to a stitch. You know, like when I just have a tiny little hoop stitch marker, I'm just sliding that thing. I'm not even thinking about it. But like there is some navigation to this stitch marker that as you are slipping it, you kind of need to think about where you are going from and to. And so it is much easier for me to remember that I'm meant to be keeping track of my rows. So this has been the only version of a row counter that like will actually stop me and make me count the next row every time I get to it. So these handful of tools have made me a better knitter and a better person. I will put links for things that I have mentioned today. So if one of these is new to you, let me know. I would love to hear it. If there is something you love that really like took your knitting to the next level that I didn't mention, chuck it in the comments. I would love to see it. I'm currently working on the first sleeve of Villanelle's cabled sweater that I'm working on. If you are interested in seeing how that turns out, uh, subscribe, come along on the journey. Thanks for hanging out. It was really fun. I would love to see you again. Bye.